He's on line two. So, John, you're on with Brother Keidi.
Hello, Carl and Brother Keidi. I just have a comment, though. As I was looking at the president speaking today for about an hour and a half, is that I think that we really need to pay attention to a pathological liar. Is that if you want to preach that what we need to do as far as social distancing and stuff like that, look how close all those journalists were together today. Look at all the people around the president, how close they were. There wasn't no social distancing there. I believe that you need to have, you need to practice what you preach, though. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thanks, John. Having said that, Brother Keidi, what John just said, do you think the president knows that something else is going on and he's not, being forthright with us?
Well, I think he tried to be forthright, but he got censored, kind of got shut down. Remember, in the early days, he was saying things like the word hoax associated with this. He also said statements like, don't worry, don't panic, this will just blow away. It's not as bad as it sounds. And he also talked about fake news media. And when it comes to my examination of what this phenomena is shaping out to be, I can't necessarily be mad at him for saying those things. I remind people, a broken clock is right 14 times a week.
14 times a week. Okay. 800-450-7876. David's next. He's in New York. He's on line 3. David, you're on with Brother Keidi.
I got probably two questions. One is, isn't the reason why, and it's not to downplay it, but isn't the reason why Corona is so lethal because it's new and we have nothing, to fight against it? And the second question is, wasn't this going to happen anyway because they was predicting about all these new viruses coming along and that the antibiotics we was taking was actually making these stronger? And, what's your opinion about that?
Okay, stick with me. You may have a little feedback, and I may have to ask you a question. One, you talk about, is this so lethal because it's new? Actually, this is not new. You can find papers and documents on coronavirus. I got a collection of them going back to 1965. And in most of those papers, and even according to the Centers for Disease Control, up until a couple of years ago, coronavirus was considered to be somewhat like what they call them, rotaviruses, a mild cold-causing virus. And when it got more severe than that, then they start looking for the flu virus to blame for people getting sicker than a mild upper respiratory infection. So the idea that this is lethal because it's new, there's no weight behind that. Second, you talked about emerging viruses. Weren't these predicted? That reminds me, I have a whole shelf of books on HIV and AIDS and that whole shelf full. Some of the books on there, I just can't stand them, but I had to read them anyways, even though I fundamentally disagreed. One of the books is called Coming Plagues by Laurie Garrett. And at the beginning of this whole episode, I noticed that here's Laurie Garrett. She's back again. Now, I regarded her book, Emerging Plagues, as an awful book. I mean, just really awful. It's just nothing but scaremongering. But here she is now, and Dr. Anthony Fauci and all of these old people that we've been looking at for 20-something years. I've heard many people say, how can you tell Dr. Anthony Fauci is lying? His mouth is moving. And when it comes to the HIV and AIDS era, a whole lot of people were angry at him because they couldn't seem to get truth to the forefront so they could deal with what was perceived to be a great crisis. And Laurie Garrett, she's a member of a group inside of the CDC called the EIS. That stands for the Epidemic Intelligence Service. The EIS has been referred to as the CIA of the CDC. It is a special cadre of doctors and scientists who are trained by the CDC's epidemiology section to when something happens or when nothing happens, you report the CDC's epidemiological line to the public. The thing is this. These EIS alumni are not just in the medical industries. They are on the staffs of all of the major newspapers in this country. So when we're looking at how does this thing get dispersed in the media the way it is, you cannot overlook the influence of the Epidemic Intelligence Service. I've been studying them since the early 1990s.
Can I say something?
I would love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, when you said new, okay, I chose the wrong words. When I said new, I didn't mean like a new virus. I know it's part of that family. What I'm saying is,
yeah. Well, in the name, you know, they call it novel coronavirus. So you're not way off track. Word novel means new.
Okay, but what I meant to say is just like what is that, measles or something like that. Like if even though they have something for it, if you don't have what do I say, the antibodies or whatever they have to fight against it, then that's the danger of this. They haven't found anything to fight against it. I'm just asking that question, not like I know anything. But how can I say, the question I was going to ask too, the conflict that the United States had with China, what is your opinion that this was, with the pharmaceuticals, how can I say, covert action or something by the United States, or you don't think it was that, I'd like to get your opinion.
Well, a certain part of me wants to go there, even though it's hard to find that evidence. I can only speculate. But the rivalry between the United States and China goes back to the early 1980s, during the time of Deng Xiaoping, which kind of changed China, and now they emerged to the world. And the beginning of the second invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan really is centered around the effort to contain a rapidly emerging Chinese superpower. So this is nothing new. This has been going on for the better part of 20 years and more. Now, in the last 2 years, China ascended to the #1 economy in the world in purchasing power parity, PPP, meaning the U.S., we may make more dollars, but the Chinese yuan buys more for their value. Last couple of points I'll make, these are all very important, but there's such a big context, it would take me all day to put this in context, is that in responding to this coronavirus pandemic in China, the government realized it was going to impact the economy, so they released $182 billion, I believe that's the exact number, $182 billion of currency reserves, money in their savings account. Meanwhile, in the U.S. response, they're talking about 68 or more billion dollars of new debt. The Federal Reserve has already put $60 billion of new debt in. Congress is debating on about putting in 10 or 12 or $20 billion of new debt. The reports before this come along of the debt of the U.S. government is already at record levels. China spent 1/5 of 1/4 of its available currency reserves. They had that cash, and they have $4 trillion worth of cash reserves, of which they spent $182 billion to handle this. In other words, if this is a contest, an economic contest between the United States and China, this coronavirus is going to wreck the United States, and that's not going to wreck China's economy.
One last question. What do you see the course of this? Will the body fight against it? Or will they come up with an antidote later? Or what do you see the course of this whole thing playing out, the virus itself?
Most people's immune system suppresses this and knocks it out of the way within 90 days.
Okay.
That's the formation of IgA and IgG antibodies. That's the way the body was designed. That's the way the immune system's designed.
All right. Okay. Thanks, David. Having said that, Brother Keidi, your research, how long does this, do you think we're going to go through this? Because the people at the White House don't seem to know. They say 2 months, they say 2 weeks, they say 3 weeks, and some of them say by next year. What are your thoughts?
If this is just straight epidemiological science, for they asked me to answer that question, then I say this year in America, 2020, there will be a total of, I gave the exact number, let me give you that number, it's going to be a total of about 409 deaths in the United States from it. Then if you compare that to 47,000 or 49,740 pneumonia deaths, then that 409 represents less than 1%. So how long will this be persisting? I think it's going to go through the election cycle, and that means it's political.
Interesting. 800-450-7876. So we're coming up on a break real soon, but Robert's joined us. He's on line 4, calling from Kansas City. Robert, your question for Brother Keidi.
Yes, sir, Brother Keidi, and I enjoyed all your commentary on this, especially the last comment you made about the pneumonia. But here's the thing, Brother Keidi. I spoke to a lady from the CDC hotline, and she was telling me that there is no cure for the coronavirus. She also said that there was no cure for the common flu either. She said people go and get flu shots, and it helps to build people's immune systems up. But she said basically that there's really no cure for the flu either. So here's the thing, Brother Keating. She told me that so far this year, in the flu season, beginning of November 2019, she said 20,000 Americans have died from the flu since the flu season began in November 2019. 20,000 people. Now, you just got through saying that 88 people have died so far from the coronavirus. Now, here's the question. I did 85 in the United States, but 88, that's probably today's figure.
85. Okay, so
Actually, hang on, fellas. We got to take a short break here because the drummers are warming up. Telling us we got to step aside and get this information, traffic and weather report in the Washington, D.C. area. Folks, you want to speak to Brother Keidi? Reach out to us at 800-450-7876. We'll take your calls after this short break right here on 1450. WOL, where information is power.